Nurture and support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Nurture and Support, a recommendation podcast sharing all the awesome since 2013. I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUL on Twitter, and with me advancing the Amazon Prime directive as always is Mel.
Hey everybody, I'm Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter, and it's another week of awesomeness. I'm excited about my recommendation today.
Me too.
I think I will like it.
I'm always excited about your recommendations, Mel, so I can hardly wait. But we'll have to do my crappy recommendation first.
Oh, please.
Mine's a fun one, but as usual, for some reason, when I go back, particularly to music recommendations, the clock goes back and they become albums that were released way back in the day. And this would be another one of those. I think this would have been released around, I recommended Shiny Beast Bat Chain Puller by Captain Beefheart before. I believe that was a 1978 release, as is the album I'm recommending today. So it must have been a good year for albums that year. But this is an album by LittleFeat, and it's called Waiting for Columbus. And you may or may not be familiar with LittleFeat. They're a band that they kind of come into some interesting categories: southern rock, swamp rock, jam rock, jazz rock. They're typically a fairly full band, multiple guitars, piano, organ, and then for Waiting for Columbus, which is a live album. It's just some of the most outstanding live music you'll ever hear. It was recorded over about 7 different concerts, and they pulled different tracks from different concerts. But it's just a beautiful sounding album, and the Tower of Power horn section, who was also quite busy during the late 70s and early 80s and joining other bands to round out whenever you need a horn section, is part of the album as well. So it's a really full kind of rock and roll, southern rock, but it's just good stuff.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. The Tower of Power horn section,
Yes.
Is this a mini group or is this a person?
It is a group of people who play the horns. I think they have actually released albums under Tower of Power themselves, but they tended to, a lot of times, you'd see them on other albums, and it's also featuring the Tower of Power horn section. So
Okay. I didn't know that.
But yeah, they tend to be more session players from that. But they've been like with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, the E Street Band, Steely Dan, and a little bit on their own. But mostly they typically kind of pair up with somebody else.
Okay.
So it's a double album set. So for most of our listeners who would not know what a double album set is,
What's an album?
Yeah, back in the old days when they used to release music on these discs that people played on a phonograph, if you had too much material, you created a double album set, and you'd have 2 of them. So it just meant there were a lot more songs on it than in the digital world. Sometimes it's the deal release of 5 songs or 15 songs. You never really know. But this is a double album set. It ultimately kind of comes down to 17 songs on the original one. Now they've done some re-releases and repackagings where it gets up, but it's a lot of music, and it's a lot of great music. I don't know, Mel, are you familiar at all with LittleFeat?
No, I don't think so. But then again, I might know a song, I just don't know who they are. So I don't think I know who they are.
I think later incarnations you may recognize some of their stuff, because they'll a lot of times play it in kind of different drops in for whether it's a sports thing, which probably wouldn't be something you see, but their music's a little bit prevalent, particularly in some of the later iterations of it. But this was the iteration back when Lowell George was still the primary force behind LittleFeat, and Lowell George has passed away some time ago, but he was originally, one of his first groups was he was with Frank Zappa. He actually, I think, also performed on a Beefheart album, but he was with the Mothers of Invention for a period of time. But Frank Zappa had a pretty strong anti-drug stance for both the lyrical content of his music and the behavior of his musicians. And that wasn't going to be a really good fit for Lowell George, because that's what he ultimately passed away from, was kind of health issues from bloating out, doing lots of different things, and he passed on due to a heart attack, I believe. But Lowell George has got an incredible voice and is a great guitar player, and so the majority of the songs on Waiting for Columbus are written by Lowell George. And so it's all really, really good stuff. Fat Man in a Bathtub is pretty much the lead song off of it, and it gives you a really good feel for what the album will be. But I said it's really rich. It's great. It's great rock. It's got a little bit of a southern and a jazz and a swamp rock thing, like I mentioned, going to it. Dixie Chicken is probably one of their most famous songs, and Dixie Chicken was indeed the inspiration for the Dixie Chicks. In terms of when they took their name, they took it from the LittleFeat song Dixie Chicken. So. Oh,
see, there's a famous bar in my college town called the Dixie Chicken.
Dixie Chicken, very likely connected to that, and that's that's a tremendous song, and they really extend. Dixie Chicken was one of the more popular LittleFeat songs, and they really extend this one out because they've got a horn section they let run for a while on it, then there's a piano solo section, and then there's a guitar duel that goes on in there too. So it's really good music from that point of view. But I said it's live. You really wouldn't know it was a live, because usually the live albums don't translate quite as well in terms of richness of music. This one absolutely does. And so it also has on it a song called Willin', which is true country and western, which is not typically in my wheelhouse in terms of what I like. But Willin' for a country song is, if I had to like a country song, I'd like Willin' for sure. And it's been covered by a ton of people. But this was right, I think, around the time where he and Zappa parted company, or just before that, because he had written Willing. Willing was the cause, rather, for him to leave Zappa, because Willing includes the line, "Give me weed, whites, and wine." And Frank didn't care for that lyric, and that was the departure of Lowell, and so he formed LittleFeat. They did really cool stuff and put out this great album. There's a lot. If you haven't ever listened to LittleFeat, it's all really cool. I think this is like traditional, the original LittleFeat, and it's got with Lowell George, which is fairly big and important from a LittleFeat standpoint. You get a lot of music. It's a double album. Waiting for Columbus, typically always in like a Rolling Stone record review kind of thing. They always say some of the top albums of all time, top live albums of all time. Waiting for Columbus is always there. And then Neon Park is the artist who did the cover for Waiting for Columbus. And I didn't realize that until my extensive show research that I always do before any Nurture and Support. The cover I always thought was just strange, but it is a hammock. It's a large tomato-headed woman sitting in a hammock,
okay,
kind of greeting you. And I just thought, well, that's strange, and that was just a vision somebody came up with. But the title of the album is Waiting for Columbus. And two things that the Europeans had no frame of reference to till they came to the Americas were hammocks and tomatoes. These were things I did not know. And so now I go, now I kind of get the cover. I just thought it was, I never really saw it. Waiting for Columbus, and it's a tomato and a hammock. I don't know. But these were two things the Europeans didn't know. So the tomato and hammock were waiting for Columbus to come. So that was a little tidbit I picked up getting ready.
If they didn't know about tomatoes, how did they make salsa?
Well, salsa came from the Americas. Yes.
These people were so deprived. My God.
Which I'm struggling with, because when some of the pastas, I don't know. It seems a little sketchy to me, but it was in Wikipedia, so it had to be right. I'm thinking.
Who knows? Maybe they didn't have tomato sauce in Italy until they hybridized our tomatoes and made Roma tomatoes. I don't have a clue.
Yep,
Botany is not my thing.
Nope, not mine either. So, but yeah, I'd recommend that. I think it finishes off with Feats Don't Fail Me Now, which is another really fun song. But basically, every song on here is enjoyable to listen to and well performed, cool music. I think you'd enjoy listening to. So that'll be my recommendation for today.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look up that Dixie Chicken song and see if I know any of the rest of their songs. My recommendation this week is a book, unsurprisingly. However, it's a book related to a movie that we all recently watched that took Twitter by storm, Sharknado 2. If any of you watched it, at the beginning of the movie, they're talking about, I believe the character April Wexler had written a book about how to survive a Sharknado. Well, they actually really made this book, as they told you in the commercials if you watched Sharknado 2. So it is, in fact, titled How to Survive a Sharknado and Other Unnatural Disasters. Fight back when monsters and Mother Nature attack. And this book is actually written by Andrew Shaffer, and it says with contributions by Finn Shepard and April Wexler. Those are the characters from the movie. I have to say I knew this book was coming out because they had advertised it a little bit, but I wasn't terribly interested in getting it because, gasp of gasps, I'm not a very big Sharknado fan. I didn't think the first movie was all that great, and I have to say, while I'm really happy it was a hit for the Asylum, the movie company that makes the movie, because I love them, they make a lot of my bad movies, I really wasn't a big fan of Sharknado 2. So I really had no interest in picking up this book, but the author himself got involved in a conversation on Twitter with a few of us and informed me that two of my favorite monsters ever are included in this book, and that is Sharktopus and Piranhaconda.
Oh.
Some of you may remember that Kelly has the only remaining Piranhaconda egg in existence. So we informed Mr. Shaffer of that, and he was, of course, terribly jealous.
So now, yeah, now it all makes sense.
Now it all makes sense. Yes.
Because I brushed into the tail end of that Twitter conversation, and I could tell this was somebody who was highly enthusiastic about the Piranhaconda egg, but I hadn't done the backtracking to so that helps round that out nicely.
He wrote this nice little guide to unnatural disasters. I like to call it a bestiary of bad sci-fi movie monsters, though I have to say the book itself is split into two parts. The first part is called Unnatural Disasters. This part deals with my least favorite kind of bad B-movie, in that it's basically kind of the weather movies, which Sharknado is, so it's not one of my favorites. Each part of the book is split into two other parts. So part one is called Unnatural Disasters, and it's divided into fighting Mother Nature, which this would include things like arachnoquake, Sharknados, and a bataclysm. Now, if any of you know which movie the bataclysm comes from, I'm having trouble finding the movie, though when I read the description, it sounds very familiar. And I can't figure out what the movie is. I haven't been able to find it. It happened in Austin. It looks like sometime around 2011 is when the movie may have come out. And it may just be that the movie hasn't been released yet. But this is one I'd really want to watch, in that it's about irradiated vampire bats are flushed from underground caves by seismic activity. And then they proceed to attack the townsfolk of Austin and cause radiation poisoning and hopefully mutant side effects. But so that's the category that Sharknado is in, and Arachnoquake, which was a good movie. I did enjoy Arachnoquake. I think you did too, Kelly.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in that, and again, love the Asylum, love what they do. In the whole kind of pecking order of the movies, the Sharknados, while okay, they didn't. There are other ones I just enjoy so much more.
Right. So the good news is that Sharknado was such a hit for them that it will enable them to make more of the movies that I enjoy more than random waterspouts picking up sharks and throwing them at cities. But anyway, so the second part of the Unnatural Disasters section is When Earth Attacks. Now, this one deals with ice twisters, though I have to say he didn't mention the magical gas station Wi-Fi that comes along with ice twisters.
Maybe he'll do an update or something like that.
Yes, I'm hoping there will be a second edition of this book because we've already been told there will be a Sharknado 3. So this section includes ice twisters, stonados, which I recommend you avoid, and swamp volcanoes, which actually wasn't too bad. I enjoyed swamp volcanoes.
Yeah, except for the complete lack of swamp, I believe.
There was no swamp, and it was originally called Miami Magma.
Yes.
Something like that, yeah. Y'all can tell, in case you don't know, that we are aficionados of sci-fi original movies, so we know pretty much all of this. This book is absolutely wonderful for anybody in your life who likes these types of movies. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew it wasn't just about Sharknado, because I had no interest in it just being about Sharknado, but it's about all of them. So now we move on to the second part, which is all about the monsters, which this is my favorite part. So this section is split into basically land and sea. Death if by land. This has one of Kelly's favorites in it, Bigfoot.
Boo.
Do you know who's at the highest risk from Bigfoot?
He'd better not.
Shock rockers and partridges and Brady's.
In
In case any of you aren't familiar with this movie, Alice Cooper appears in this movie, and Bigfoot takes him down spectacularly.
Well, we don't know. I'm sure Alice he did kick Alice quite a distance. But there's no evidence that he was done. And Alice was fearless. He stood up to Bigfoot. So
yes, he did. He did.
He got drop kicked. But.
All hail Alice. A couple of other ones in this section is of course Megapython and Mothman. And then we move on to sea. And for some reason, these are always my favorites. So I'm gonna give you the whole list of the ones that are included in the sea section. So far, I've only been giving you a couple of them. So in the Destruction if by Sea section, we have Dino Shark, Electrokraken, Gatoroid, Ghost Shark, the incomparable Piranaconda, Terracuda, who we recently saw, Redneck Gator, Robo-Croc, which actually was much better than I expected Robo-Croc to be.
I liked it.
Yes. Sharktopus, my all-time favorite, even though the last movie was not that great. And Swamp Shark, another one of my big favorites. So those are all of the ones that are included in Destruction if by Sea. And I like all of them. They're great. So essentially, this book is a list of, I call it, like I said before, a bestiary of different creatures and disasters that you might find at the end of the world. He gives a nice little shout out to Douglas Adams in the introduction. I'm going to read you the first little paragraph. In the science fiction classic, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams joked that Earth is mostly harmless. A lot has changed since he wrote that back in the 70s. We've seen Sharknados demolish Los Angeles. We've seen meteorites reverse the Earth's polarity. We've seen an 80-yard megapython swallow one of the monkeys. So we're not exactly mostly harmless anymore. We're mostly harmful. One of the cute things with every little intro in here is there is a list of risks. And he gives these in the terms of Finn from Sharknado. So the threat to humanity scale goes from 1 little skull to 5 skulls. 5, of course, being an extinction level event. And your risk of encounter scale is little lightning bolts. They also go from 1 to 5. And Finn Shepard's WTF factor, and that stands for, wow, that's freaky.
Very cool.
And that goes from little exclamation marks. 1 stands for gnarly to 5, which is far out beyond human comprehension. So it's a cute little book that I think all of you will enjoy if you enjoy these types of movies. There's little things scattered throughout about apocalyptic drinks that you can make, all sorts of neat little things. There's line drawings of all of the monsters or the disasters that we're talking about, and I think that y'all will enjoy it. I am really happy that the author was cool enough to engage with a few of us little bad B-movie geeks online and informed me that Sharktopus was in this book because, of course, with Sharktopus being in this book, I had to have it. So I recently got my copy, and I enjoyed reading through it quickly. So I think it would make a great gift for the B-movie nerd in your life. So I suggest you check it out. How to Survive a Sharknado and Other Unnatural Disasters by Andrew Shaffer, and that's Shaffer.
Very cool. And what could be better than waiting for Columbus, sitting in a hammock, eating a tomato, and reading this book? What a perfect, you can get Waiting for Columbus playing in the background and flipping through the book. And
That's a perfect weekend.
There you go. That's the kind of stuff you get from Nurture and Support. We just blocked out a great afternoon for you right there. So,
yep, very enjoyable.
Very cool. All righty, we'll move right into social media recommendations. And so, Mel, I did not see if you, for the darkest hour, were you on last night or not during the darkest hour? I didn't see you real active if you were. Sci-fi movie?
No, I didn't. I didn't know there was a new one.
This one I don't think these were like invisible electric aliens. Then a lot of it was in Moscow or in Russia, different parts of Russia, that were invisible, and then they had to find ways to attack them and all that. It was not a recent release. It was a couple years old. So I think now next week there is, another big one coming up, but there's another good one I guess this next Saturday. But anyway,
I'll have to check my guide.
Yeah, so Sci-Fi is picking it back up a little bit, getting us a few of the bad movies on Saturday, which is a lot of fun for many of us to get on together and kind of crack wise. And what I really like about it, outside of there's the cast of regulars that you typically see there, is that every once in a while somebody new kind of starts. You bump into them because they're busy doing the same thing, and since you're all using the same hashtag, you eventually come across. And there's some people that are incredibly funny, and so your circle of friends to live tweet these bad movies continues to grow. And this individual I'm recommending for my social media recommendation for this week, her name, and I apologize, Amy, if I butcher it. It's Amy Figueroa, I believe. Her Twitter handle is @Amy_glitters, GLITTERS_glitters. She's pretty funny. She's pretty quick and pretty mean, but in a good way, in a fun way. But in the storyline, there were a lot of blondes in the storyline, which is causing a lot of frustration for a lot of folks in there. And then they were down a blonde, and then another blonde showed up, and so she kind of made reference to, you can join our group. We have an opening for a blonde, which I thought was a pretty clever thing. But towards the very end, they hook up with these Russian mercenaries. Or some remnants of the Russian army who you have to kind of outfit yourself in unique ways to fight these electric guys and all this stuff. And so their fighting is the Russian military guys are pretty cool characters. And at the end, the Americans are going off to, now that they know how to fight the aliens, to go fight more aliens. And they're like, come with us, Russian army guys. And the guy's like, no, I cannot go. Moscow is at my back, and then so he's a really cool character and all that. So she takes that and she retweets it out as, no, I cannot go. I left my vodka at home, which I thought was pretty clever. So she's funny. She's quick on it, interactive. So @AmyGlitters for your, maybe before the next sci-fi movie, you want to follow her because she's a good one. So that'd be my recommendation for this week.
All right, cool. I'm sad that I missed that. I wasn't home, but I could have changed my plans if I knew there was a movie. I've gotten so used to us not having a movie lately that I didn't think about it.
It's the Signs of the Zodiac next week. It's I can't remember, Disasters of the Zodiac or something. But basically,
cool. Will Capricorns, will little fishtail goats climb out of the sea and start murdering people because
there's going to be 12 problems, I guess, or something.
I'm all about that.
There you go.
I want some cannibal goats. Okay. All right. Well, my social media is not going to be very original because I'm going to suggest that you follow Mr. Andrew Shaffer, the author of the How to Survive a Sharknado book. His handle is @Andrew T. Shaffer, and Shaffer is SHAFFER. Like I said, he was cool enough to interact with us on Twitter, and that's a sign of a true B-movie nerd. I mean, he wrote a whole book about it, and he immediately knew that Sharktopus and Piranhaconda were Roger Corman films. So, there you go. Of course, he did write a book about it, but still. He knows his B-movie monsters. And he was nice enough to talk to us. And he also, I will tell you, has a few alternate Twitter accounts that are not as nice as his real one that
really?
He will retweet from occasionally to give people a way to go follow some of his other accounts. And I'm not going to spoil the fun by telling any of you who they are. It's not very hard to find if you want to find them. But he has one in particular, which while it does often mostly tweet about publishing industry type stuff, he gets into some other things occasionally, which I find are really funny. I retweeted one this morning that it has a Twilight aspect to it. So if you like to make fun of Twilight like I do, you might enjoy that one. But check out at Andrew T. Shaffer on Twitter. I think you'll enjoy his Twitter feed, and I think you'll really enjoy his book, How to Survive a Sharknado. So that's all I have this week.
Great. Well, we'll hand it over to Comic-Con panel veteran Matt Shivers to take us out, and look forward to talking to all of you next week.
You can contact us on our website, nurtureandsupport.net, or email us at nurtandsupp@gmail.com. That's NURTANDSUPP@gmail.com. Or tweet us at nurtandsupp on Twitter.
Nurturing and supporting Sharknado.